Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to a Monday Overreaction show here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson, back from another mini vacation. Welcome, Anwar.
Dude, it was fun. I joked on Twitter. I didn't expect everyone to really take it to heart. Where I was like, man, I went away and Texas gets 7 commits, including Arch Manning. Should I just stay away? Overwhelmingly, as much as people like me, there weren't too many. And most everybody said you can take another week. I just don't know if Ketch is down with me just collecting checks for the sake of Texas recruiting. I don't think that's how this works, but it's good to be back regardless.
Hey, this Monday Overreaction show brought to you by RogueShop.com. I have not partaken in any Rogue products yet. It's 10:41 in the morning and I'm still a little groggy. I feel stoned just from rolling out of bed and not getting a lot of sleep last night. But go to RogueShop.com, use the promo code OrangeBloods. Anwar and I will give away some gummies today to somebody in the chat. Don't know how we're going to decide that. We'll just do it very organically. The person in the chat that maybe is the MVP of today's chat will receive some gummies courtesy of RogueShop.com. Our guy Richard always throwing it down. Hey, do us a solid. As you start to creep into the chat, you're joining the show. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and make that happen for us. We are performing for you. All we want are your likes and your subscriptions. Anwar, welcome back. It was, as you hinted, it was a busy, crazy weekend. The Longhorns get Arch Manning's commitment on Thursday, which brought you out of vacation.
Yes.
Then you went away, and then Texas picked up a slew of commitments over the weekend. The anticipation is they will pick up more in the coming days, and it allows us to have a big overreaction show today, kind of centered around recruiting and all that happened over the weekend, the momentum, the tsunami created by Arch Manning. Do you have a hot take that you want to lead off with today? I've got one, but mine is scorching hot, and it might be better off to let you lead us off if you've got something.
Well, I've got a take, and I've also got some questions for you, but because I'll give you my take, but I'll tell you my questions and I'll give you my take, because some of the questions I want to have is your assessment of some of these guys. Like I was watching the video this morning that you, Jason, and Cole had put together in, kind of breaking down some of those guys. So like one of the questions I'm going to have for you is there's a lot of names, outside of Arch, who's the most impressive recruit in your book that they've signed since then. So I just want you to maybe think about that for a sec. Or not signed, I guess committed. My take is, Ketch, we kind of figured that Arch would kind of, I don't know what's the word, help guys who may have been on the fence to go ahead and make their commitments. And there's, that's the kind of momentum that I think that Arch and the family and even Sark was hoping for, that, hey, if this guy commits, these programs, these kids who are down to 2 to 3 programs, they go ahead and jump in the boat. We had heard things heading into last weekend that this was going to be a kind of a big recruiting weekend, that there was a lot of big things that were supposed to happen. And I guess it did, to a certain degree. Again, some of these are names, there's big names that are out there, and then there's these names that are here. But, overall, if you're Sark, you're building bodies. I think they've now, if I looked correctly, they've moved up to number 6 in the Rivals recruiting rankings. Catch. They were pretty low before that. I wanted to say it was somewhere in the 30s or so before these commitments. So they rise up to 6, kind of in that, knocking on that top 5. Bigger names out there, bigger fish to fry. But overall, this is the kind of things I think if you're Texas, you at least want to get a couple offensive linemen. Look like developmental projects to me. You have to tell me a little bit more. The wide receiver. So overall, I would say for me, not a bad start. I will step back and give the floor to you, though.
Well, I'm gonna get people mad at me today, so I'm trying to be positive as much as possible.
Okay.
To answer your first question, when you say who is the guy that stands out to me among the players they landed this weekend?
Yes.
For me, that would be Harker Heights offensive lineman Jaden Chapman. He's a guy that I have rated personally as the best tackle prospect in the state. I've got him as like a mid 4-star prospect, top 20-ish or so in the state of Texas. And in a year where the offensive linemen in the state of Texas aren't the best guys, aren't national elite of the elite like they've been the last few years, where we've done shows 2 years ago on the Brockermeyers and what was a historically good offensive line class before Sarkisian showed up, Herman's last season, and the feeling that Texas really missed out. And God, you have a historically good year of offensive linemen and you don't really get any of them. And then the next year they have another historically good offensive line class in the state of Texas, and they get almost all of them, right? So it was one of two extremes in each of the last 2 years. This year, the offensive line talent in the state of Texas just isn't as good. It's not quite at that level. There's no Kelvin Banks. There's no DJ Campbell. I don't know that there's a NATO, right? So, but I look at Jaden Chapman as a guy that could have easily fit into last year's recruiting class, and he could hold his own. I wouldn't put him in the top half of that recruiting class, but he absolutely belongs. He probably stands out the most to me of the guys that they landed. Everybody that they landed is solid, is a really fine prospect. I don't know that you look at what they got over the weekend and think that the difference makers are there. But I think the good news is that difference makers are on the way. I think one of the reasons why that's not the headline, why is Sark filling up on low 4-star and high 3-star kids, is because the word is out that there are other big timers. That Cedric Baxter is a top 5 running back in the country. He should commit soon. Jonte Cook, I think, is going to end up being a 5-star wide receiver. He blew it up in College Station this weekend. He did really well. He may commit today. So there are Anthony Hill was a 5-star linebacker that visited this past weekend that Texas is probably the leader for right now, and that's probably a Texas or Texas A&M battle. So everybody is really riding the high of what the expectations are of what is about to come. I have a big old hot take. I just don't know that anybody's quite ready for it yet because everybody wants to feel good.
I don't know, Ketch. I'm looking at the chat, and no one seems to be pumped up about these offensive linemen. Like I've keep going through it, and it's if you just keep going, I'm trying to keep up. I'm listening to you, trying to keep up. Listen, and
it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, but it seems like a big bag of when people are talking about the offensive linemen in the chat.
Well, Texas had 0 offensive linemen committed before the weekend. They picked up 4 yesterday. The thing is, when you look at the math, they probably are. Each of these guys individually falls into the category of about 20% pan out. And the math says that if they can hit on one of these guys, Anwar, that they'll be ahead of what the expectations should be. If they end up hitting on 2, now you're talking about the kind of ahead of the national curve development that this program is really lacking. But we're years away from really finding out whether or not these guys were the right guys to take or not the right guys. I think I have a very non-conventional way of looking at recruiting when I look at these guys. And leave Eric's super chat comment up there. We'll get back to that in a second. Sarkisian's a very conventional coach. I mean, I wrote a column a week ago that suggested that Texas should stick with about 15 high school commitments in this class, maybe creep that up to 20, and then save maybe 10 spots for the portal and really going after guys that have started experience, guys that have competed at a high level, guys that I feel like are a little less risky. And you show up today and Texas has already got 14 commitments. They look like they're on their way to signing a very conventional 25-man-ish or more class that's full of high school kids. And then maybe they'll cherry pick a few guys from the portal. You know, I look at what happened this weekend as a little conventional. And, you know, I think there's a new way and a new world that exists in recruiting that in 5-10 years is going to be kind of accepted as the way. I'm not sure that Steve Sarkisian is there yet when it comes to building a program. He's very much, and he hasn't shied from this. He is 100% locked into recruiting high school kids. And, you know, I view the type of offensive linemen they signed this weekend, for me, are guys you let go to other schools, let the other schools assume the risk. And in 2 or 3 years, if they pan out, then you poach them. Then you take them from schools. You let other schools take the risk and do the hard work. And then you poach them. And that's not really what Sarkisian has done. And there will be a lot of conversation about this offensive line class. You know, what happens? There's just a lot of questions that come with taking a bunch of high 3 stars and low 4 stars. You're not going to get answers for a lot of these kids until 2025. And we're trying to do a show in 2022 and definitively give, you know, an like commentary that is hard to have some real backbone and teeth to it until we see what these kids are going to end up looking like by the time 2025. By the time Arch Manning is a junior, how many of these guys are ready to play? It's a hard question to answer.
Well, first, Eric, hope you and the wife work it out. So I'm glad you got some happiness in that home. So that's got to be rough.
I didn't know that kitchen remodels did that to marriages.
It must be a bitch of a. You would think it's just one area, but you know, I'm looking at my kitchen. It must be a whole lot. What is Eric? Hang in there. Don't get divorced over a kitchen remodel. Ketch. It sounds like you know, as I hear you talk, you know, the one thing Steve Sarkisian always has said, especially last year, he said this a lot. He said there were guys out there, if I wanted to get them to commit today, they would, but they were holding out for the bigger fish. And they did get those. It sounds like what you're saying is these were the guys that in maybe in other years, maybe those are the guys they slow play and hold out for the bigger fish, and that they brought in this over the weekend is what it is. Am I putting words in your mouth, Ketch? I don't want to misconstrue anything.
The guys that they've taken, let me put it to you like this. If Texas had taken this offensive line class a year ago, people would have been burning shit down. Like this is, and I don't mean to sound insulting because these are all individually good prospects. I mean, there are only so many elite of the elite prospects and there really are none in the state of Texas this year. So if you're going to do your shopping in Texas for offensive linemen this year, there are limitations that come with that. I think that from a recruiting ranking standpoint, these are the types of profiles that he was talking about last year that he said we'd rather wait and get, you know, we could have 6 or 7 commitments. He was talking about guys with this type of profile. And I thought R. Long made a good point. Like, think about it like this. Next year, they're not going to recruit a high 3-star quarterback just because they signed a 5-star this year. They'll go after another nationally elite guy and try to take the best guy they can. You know, there's no real way to get around the fact, and I don't think the coaches would argue this either. The guys they've taken are not early impact guys. These are players that are going to need 2 or 3 years of development. When we're talking about specifically 4 out of the 7 commitments from the weekend are from offensive linemen. None of these guys are impact guys. They're not guys that if they signed this year, you would be talking about them being able to play in year one the way that we are a lot of the freshman offensive linemen coming in next year. These are guys that just need a little more time to develop. It puts, frankly, Anwar, even more pressure on this 2022 offensive line class to come in and do the damn thing, because I don't know that where we look at and say the cavalry is on the way in 2022 with this freshman class. If there are holes and empty spots next year, you're not going to look at this offensive line class and say the cavalry is on the way. They're going to fix this in 2023. These guys simply need more time. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're worse prospects, because if they pan out and hit, they got a chance to be really good players. However, they're far riskier from a mathematical, the mathematical odds of these players. These players fit the profile where historically 17% at best hit in terms of being NFL drafted players from this tier of the rankings. It kind of is what it is. Like, the math says you probably don't hit on any of them. And if you do, you hit on one. Well, I think everybody's goal needs to be, think of each of these guys as a faceless prospect. You need to hit on two of them. You know, two of them? That's amazing. Really, like, I'm not being facetious here. If you can hit big on 2 out of the 4, then you're ahead of the national curve in a big way with regards to what you should expect from a group like this. So I think the coaches are confident that they can get 2 out of this 4 to pan out. And if they do, they'll be winners. And look, they don't all pan out. So everybody has to get comfortable, I think, with the idea. Someone made the comment earlier, like, let me pull this one up. Larry said, how many guys have we taken that were top tier and never panned out? Maybe Sark and Flood see something in these kids, let the staff do their work. Well, get guys in top tiers bust out all the time. In general, recruiting is like a game in Vegas. It's always rigged for the house. Unless it's a 5-star guy, the odds of them being drafted in the NFL are much more against them than for them. So top tier guys miss all the time. Low tier guys miss all the time. The common component among all of this is that there are a lot of misses. Everybody has to get comfortable with us talking about there will be misses, because there are always going to be misses. It's, for me, Anwar, it's simply a matter of taking as little risk as possible. How do you mitigate your risk? And how do you put yourself in a best position to come out of this with success? There's no doubt that Sark and Flood see something in these kids. I mean, duh, of course. That doesn't mean that they're exceptions to the rule just because the coaches see something in them. Every kid that's in any recruiting class is somebody that the coaches saw something in. That doesn't often equate to long-term success. There's a lot of confirmation bias cooked into that, and that's okay. But, like, in 5 years from now, these kids will be data points. We'll look at their careers and say they were either successes or they were not. And there will be guys who fall into the category of or not. And a lot of those you can see coming from a mile away. So
as you're talking, I was decided to go through your LSR. How many? I'm curious for the guys that have taken these. I see Chapman is listed at 25. Yes, and your LSR. I'm just curious as to the rankings for the guys that they've been able to get, where you rank them as well.
Well, Ryan, if we look at the entire class, Ryan Niblett is, for me, maybe a top 5 kid in the state. When it's all said and done, Ryan Niblett has 5-star talent. He may not quite have 5-star game yet, which is why he's probably more of a national top 50, 60 player than maybe top 25, but I don't know who I would throw him back for. Like, you can't teach what he has. I'm a big fan of Dylan Spencer. He will go up in the next rankings in part. Man, I came across a stat this weekend, Anwar, that's just crazy. If you're a 4-star or higher defensive lineman, defensive end in the state of Texas over the last 20 years, and you're 6'4" and above, 50% of those guys have gone on to play in the NFL. It's an amazing hit rate. And what it tells me is if you're a defensive line, defensive end prospect in the state of Texas with a certain kind of frame, your value as a prospect based on what's happened historically. I mean, Dylan Spencer's only a low 4-star, but historically, low 4 stars with his physical profile in the state of Texas hit like 5 stars. It is the single biggest anomaly I've ever seen in all of the number crunching that I've ever done in any of the positions. It's kind of crazy. You look at the guys from this past weekend, and really, I think Connor Stroh, who's a high 3-star and I think ranked 50 or 55 or something like that in my latest rankings, I think he's going to go up. I think he's a top 25 top of prospect in the state. However, as I say that, it really is important to note that once you get beyond the top 12 or so guys in the state, 13 through 100, they're basically the same. There's a little nuanced difference between the various tiers between 13 and 100. But for the general fan at home, do they really want to hear that one guy's got an 80% failure rate versus an 82% failure rate versus an 84%? You know what I mean? Like, it's very new. It's the most nerdy of arguing about value at that point when guys are when you can just say they're basically 1 out of 5s and you can keep it at that. Most of the guys that Texas landed over the weekend have profiles that fit into the 1 out of 5 range of prospect. Whereas when Jonte Cook commits later on today, you're talking about a guy who's probably 1 out of 2. And all that guy has to do is avoid the Mount Rushmore of things that can sidetrack a guy. I've decided what they are: injuries, drugs, arrests, and I counted just domestic stuff at number 4, right? That's maybe you had a kid and suddenly you got to go home and take care of the kid. Maybe mom and dad are sick. Domestic stuff is the fourth thing in the Mount Rushmore of things that sidetrack careers. But Jonte Cook, if he avoids the Mount Rushmore, that guy's going to play on Sundays. And that's a more definitive thing to say out loud than these other prospects. So you just can't be quite that certain about.
Yeah, so to the overweight lover, Heavy D in the house, that's asking about the 7-on-7s at this moment. One, I'll just say I just got back from vacation. Two, so we'll get more on that. Two, I'm going to tell you, and Ketch will tell you, don't get worked up over 7-on-7s and all those days of Ketch will tell you about the days of knocking on the door and getting the quarterback, getting guys around. These coaches now want too much control. It's all within their auspices, all within their reins, and so don't get too hyped up and overworked about that. And at the end of the day,
now that coaches can work with kids in the summer, which in the past the player-led things were basically the only things that existed. They're definitely de-emphasized. I would just say about 7-on-7s. This time last year with 7-on-7s, you were already hearing the Xavier Worthy buzz. Mm-hmm. There's not a new guy yet that has showed up that's creating the type of waves that I would say in August, watch the hell out for that guy as a surprise factor in the 2 deeper with the starting lineup. I think we're a little bit of ways away from that. Someone says, can you please grant Anwar the super chat from Joseph, some more PTO so we can get another 7 commitments? I like how your time off is just the thing. I told people earlier, what if it's really not so much you had time off? What if mom staying in your home is the good luck charm.
See, now that's taking one for the team, guys.
That is the ultimate take one for the team.
Ultimate take one for the team. No, you guys would have to like find a guy for her to date so he can occupy her time. And so because my mom is, who looks great, by the way, looks fantastic.
She's definitely dateable. Like we can make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, like she went on a cruise. I mean, I guess I'm trying to find my mom a date here. Let me show you what she. Now this is 72. Okay, now this is my mom. This is 72 years old here. That's mom's.
Man, I just don't know that the 72-year-old dudes on Orange Bloods are the guys that I'd be pairing with your mom.
Fair enough.
Although some could be sugar daddies.
Well, that's true.
Hey, there are two things we're looking for, right? We're looking for occupation of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for somebody that brings money to the table, quite frankly. That she doesn't have to pay for everything.
Correct.
You don't want some deadbeat 72-year-old guy who's just slumming off your mom. We need her to be able to suck that guy's money dry, right? Take all of it and also occupy time.
Just somebody occupy time. If she comes here in her whole world is me.
Said Kirk Bowles. I think Kirk is married. Let's keep Kirk out of the dating pool.
I don't know I could do Thanksgiving dinner with Kirk as he's cutting the turkey and that leading the prayer. I don't know if I can report to Papa Kirk like that.
Hey, we got a super chat comment. Don P says people complaining about, this is straight out of your playbook, Anwar. People complaining about not getting 5 stars, but we've been getting smacked by low 4 stars and three stars from TCU, Oklahoma State, LSU. He snuck in. It's ISU, excuse me, and KU for the last 7 years. I mean, development. It is no matter. It's the key, even with this offensive line class. You're going to get 4 low 4-star, high 3-star type prospects. It comes down to development now. And when you sign a class like that, you can win. You can come out of that with a group of guys that is above the national projections. It just requires good development. I think one of the things that's important is there's no evidence that Kyle Flood has been successful as a college coach because he's been cranking out players of this level. You look at Alabama, Anwar, I did that this weekend, and it's hard to pinpoint like where he was there 2 years. So when you're talking about offensive linemen, he never really got a chance to coach the guys that he recruited. When you're talking about offensive linemen, it's not like very many guys just show up and play immediately. Alabama's taken about 20 different non-high 4-star and 5-star offensive linemen since 2015. Only one of them has been drafted. And you wouldn't look and say that based on his time at Alabama that he did he wasn't there long enough to be able to build a reputation of developing players with this type of recruiting profile. It is a bit of an unknown. I mean, I think there's a general feeling to trust Flood that he's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country and that he can take these guys and get more out of them. He's certainly being paid as a guy that can do that. What I'm saying is there's no historical evidence that 100% definitively says that is a true statement. It's just a bit of an unknown at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I get the point because it's the point I always, raise when, I've always had my, infamous how many 5 stars does it take to be the TCU thing, which you can put on my tombstone. And so, at some point, you've got to be able to coach up. Hey, what's up, Rob? You got to be able to coach up the guys that you have and then bring it in. Now, to your point, Ketch, what you're essentially saying is, look, we understand that Oklahoma State, Baylor's of the world, the Iowa States, they aren't expected to bring in high 4-star or 5-star recruits. That's the expectation here. So it's easier probably to develop guys, get them in the system and do it for 3 years, because the expectation is you go to these programs to develop. Texas isn't one of those programs. This is the program that you come to develop, but you're expected to be a 4-star, 5-star. Like, you're expected to battle the big name programs and win those battles, where some of these other guys aren't having to fight those fights, and they can let guys develop for a long period of time. So coaching does matter, absolutely. You still got to be able to coach up what you have. And I've been on that, banging that drum for the longest time. When we start talking about recruiting rankings, like at some point, just do what you're getting paid high 6 figures to do, which is coach up your guys and get the most out of them.
Anwar, you're always going to, inside of any Division I program, and this includes like Alabama and Georgia, not quite at the extent as it would other schools, but everybody's in this mix. More than 50% of your roster is going to be made up of high 4 stars. There's only so many 5 stars and high 4 stars to go around.
Correct.
So you're always going to have like 50 guys in your program. In the old days of building a program where you're 85 guys all through high school football recruits for the most part, you're going to have like 50, 60 guys in your program that weren't elite recruits. And the key to beating the teams, the thing that Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State, those schools have been doing is they win the margins. It's a game of fine margins. It's like I talked about this offensive line class earlier. If you can get 2 out of the 4 to hit, like really hit, now you're developing at a rate that is far superior than the national numbers would suggest is likely. That's how you win. And what Oklahoma State and Baylor and Iowa State have done historically is they take a bunch of high 3-star guys, and when the national average says they should hit on 1 out of 8 or 1 out of 7, they're making that 2 out of 7 or 2 out of 8. And that might seem like a really slim difference. But when you expand that out over an entire roster of 50 or 60 players, and suddenly you're hitting at twice the rate that other teams are, you're winning a lot of games at that point, because you have a lot of developed players who are 2 or 3 years in and are frontline plus players at the collegiate level. Texas hasn't been on the right side of that kind of development in a long time. And if this staff can get them there, they'll be really good. I've seen a couple of people real quick. Anthony Hill, unless that just happened, as I mentioned earlier in the and I haven't seen anybody in our Slack channel say that Anthony Hill.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
I
would be going crazy if that happened.
I think Anthony Hill I think it'd be fair to describe him as a Texas lean at this point. And David Hicks Jr., the Longhorns are certainly in the mix. They still have a lot of work to do, though, before you would describe him in the same manner that you would Anthony Hicks. But of the top 2 defensive prospects they're recruiting of front 6, front 7 players, right now I think they get 1 and they're working on the second. It's a better position than they were in 2 weeks ago. And then you look at the defensive backs, and it's really a conversation of Javion Toviano and Malik Muhammad. Those are the 2 borderline 5-star or just flat out 5-star talents in the secondary this year in the state of Texas. If I had to put money on one thing happening, I would probably bet on Texas getting 1 of the 2. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, it may be that those 2 guys don't end up going to the same school, because they're competing for playing time. They're competing for shine. And each of those going to their own independent schools probably puts each of them in a position where they can better immediately contribute. And I think both of those guys have an eye on that. They could end up in the same school when it's all said and done. But my guess is they end up going to separate schools when it's all said and done.
Hey, Ketch, I'm just kind of curious. Isn't like legacy.com like the obituary thing, though?
I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure legacy.com is literally where you go when someone has an obituary. So if that's the case, I don't really get the joke.
Maybe it's like old people go there and they both die and meet their next companion at the same time. It's all close enough that you just one-stop shop.
Well, cool. Well, so
but I don't know what legacy.com is, so I don't know whether you should be insulted or not.
Well, legacy.com is where you go to publish your obituary.
Maybe he meant something else. I got to believe that Money Out to Anus wasn't trying to, kill moms. What we're trying to do is get her like 20 more good years with a companion. But you know what? Forget about dating. Let's open this thing up. A good friend that she can go play bingo with and, whatever 72-year-old women do. What do 72-year-old women do with their free time?
My mom goes on cruises all the time. She is a
cruise. She's got to find her a friend to go on cruises with.
Yeah. No, she's got a friend to go on cruises with, but it's the what you do day to day is the issue. Like that's good twice a year. There's another 50 weeks that Anwar's taking one for the team, and I'm just, if I gotta take one for the team, someone's got to help me out. I'm just saying. So someone's gonna have to find their grandpa. And who's active and got his own money and who likes to get out and do stuff and go that route.
For a long time, Heather wanted me to hook up her mom with somebody on Orange Bloods. Mom's a good-looking woman, not 72, probably about maybe 10 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, she was like the president of the Texas X's in Houston for a while. So she really thought, find somebody on Orange Bloods who's a guy whose like wife has died and then is just waiting to take care of a good-looking older woman. We're kind of in the same boat, although it's been a while since Heather asked me to hook her mom up with somebody on Orange Bloods. But believe me, that was a thing I used to hear whispered in my ear all the time. Like I just needed to make a post. OT, where are the old single guys at? And then posting photos.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe I'll take that to Twitter one day. Maybe we'll just take a Twitter, just put a picture up and like, hey, trying to hook my mom up. You got a grandpa out there. Let me know. So who knows? Maybe one day. You never know.
Anwar, just back to the recruiting thing. I think the biggest thing from here is that Texas is sitting on 14 commitments. This thing is going to grow from here in the coming weeks and months. It seems pretty clear to me they're taking at least 25 guys in this recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
What has to happen now is they've got to become more selective. No offense to anybody that committed this weekend, but if over the course of the, say, next 10 commitments they get, 8 of them are nationally elite blue chip kind of prospects, then I think you're talking about a recruiting class that's probably better than last year's. People forget last year, Texas signed 3 players in the rivals.com rankings who were either high 4 stars or 5 stars. That's it. Devin Campbell, Kelvin Banks, and Terrence Brooks. And everybody else was in the tiers below that suggests they're mere mortals. Now, I think they got the Brennan Thompson ranking wrong, but I'm splitting hairs here to a certain extent. So even if we say they signed 4 a year ago, that was a top 5 class nationally, but they only signed 4 guys who I would describe as elite of the elite. I think they're sitting at 2 right now when you talk about Arch Manning and Ryan Niblett. If they can add 5 or 6 more of that ilk, now you're talking about maybe a recruiting class that might also finish top 5. They might finish number 5 in the country again this year, but they may finish number 5 in the country with a much bigger grouping of elite of the elite prospects. And I think that is what people should hope and expect for We got a question: did Billy Walton flip from Texas to Texas? Excuse me, from Oklahoma State. I haven't seen that that's happened yet. I've got his recruit. I have the instant analysis for a Billy Walton commitment ready to go, but I don't believe that has officially happened. Although, look, man, we're doing this thing live, so we may get to a point where a commitment happens before this show is over. Billy Walton is a perfect example of a kid that if I'm Texas, I just don't know that I would be taking this early in the recruiting. Billy Walton, in the history of the Rivals rankings, Anwar, only one player has ever emerged as an NFL drafted prospect at the edge position with Billy Walton's physical attributes, and that was Von Miller. One guy ever has panned out at a high level, and it's a guy that you would describe as kind of a freak of all freaks at 6'3", 210 pounds as, a young prospect. I just don't know that 2 and 3 year developmental prospect needs to be a developmental prospect on your watch. And it's clearly, I can tell I'm going to annoy the hell out of Texas coaches for the next few years because there's a strategy that they have that I slightly disagree with. And, I can't be a homer and just go along with it. Yeah, rah, rah, rah. He's a mid 3-star guy. He's a great prospect. Like, I know too much now. The numbers are too much ingrained into my head. I know what they mean. They're just taking more projects than I would for my money. But I'm not in charge of a program. Steve Sarkisian is. And I will also admit that, like, my view of how things in an optimal world isn't one that many programs across the country are currently using. Maybe Michigan State, maybe Florida State. It's a very new way of looking at recruiting. And, I doubt most of the coaches across the country are there.
So there's a couple of things within that. And by the way, if my son is on FaceTime with his mom. So if you hear screaming in the background, that's what that is.
Good.
I had to put my earbuds in because they were having fun with each other. But there's two things I have, like from a rankings perspective, Ketch. Texas is ranked 6. As you were talking, I looked it up. Texas is ranked 6. I was actually surprised to see the Baylor is currently ranked number 7 in the country. I mean, we'll see how long this sticks. I mean, Penn State's at 8, Northwestern's at 9, Arkansas is at 10, Georgia's at 11. We'll see how this sticks. I'm sure this will totally change. Texas Tech is at 4. It's a very interesting world, but the rankings suggest, Ketch, that Texas is picking up good guys. Now, maybe there's a math portion of it that maybe I'm missing, but from a rankings perspective, being at 6, it seems to lend to the belief that even though there's some more developmental guys than you would prefer, the rankings say this is not too bad. And then it's because the
rankings lie to you all the time. The rankings have convinced people that having a top 10 national class is something that's good. Whereas I would say usually a top 10 class is the same as a number 25 class. It all comes down to elite of the elite prospects and how many of them you sign. Texas currently has the 8th best average star rating, which is really where you want to be. I mean, Ohio State is at first at 4.08. Texas is 8th at 3.79. You mentioned Baylor in the team rankings. Baylor is 1 spot behind Texas, but Texas's average star ranking is 3.79 and Baylor's is 3.17. That's a significant difference. But the greatest trick that the devil ever played on people with regards to recruiting was convincing them that 4-star players were big deals. And they're not. In Texas, if you look at its recruiting class right now, they have
got 9 4-stars.
They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have 8 low 4 stars, and they have 4 high 3 stars. All of those players are roughly the same. They just are. And Rivals gives a lot of like weight to getting a low 4-star commitment that means something in their team rankings, but those players historically do not develop into big time players at significantly higher rates than those behind them. So really and truly, you've got Arch Manning and Ryan Niblett. For my money, those two guys are separate. The other 12 commitments all go into a pot. And because once you get past the top 70 in the country, the number 100 guy is really worth the same as the number 600 guy. And it's something that, as I've explained it to people over the last couple of years, it's kind of ruined recruiting for a lot of people, because it's a lot more fun to just get excited because you signed a 4-star player, to learn that the 4-star player, just your average 4-star player, isn't really much more valuable than your average 3-star player, makes recruiting as a whole a lot less fun, because once you know that, you've taken the blue pill, you're in a position where you can't lie to yourself. And that's kind of where I'm at today. I can't sit here today and tell everybody, rah, 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 what Texas did over the weekend is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. All of these players are going to be awesome. Like, I can't do that. The reality is they got commitments from 7 players, all of whom fall into this big pot of players that, generally speaking, are 1 out of 5s. So they've got 12, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 players right now. The math says they should probably hit on 2. What they've got to do is hit on 3 or 4. And that's all that has to happen. And if you do that and your big-time prospects hit, you're going to have successful recruiting classes. Anything less than that, and you're in the territory of what Texas has been doing for the last decade or so, and it's not good enough. From Connor Anwar says, need overreactions. How many 5 stars does Texas end up with in the 2023 class? Great question. I will say did I freeze up?
Yes. You're back, though.
I answered that question by saying I think Texas gets 3 5-star players. Anthony Hill on defense, Arch Manning, John Tay Cook. And some services may have Cedric Baxter rated that high when it's all said and done. He's only a high 4-star at his highest ranking at this point, which I believe is with On 3. Well, hold on. Why hypothesize? I got the damn information in front of me. Give me just a second, and I'll look that up just for giggles.
And then what about Javion? Is he not in the mix, in your opinion?
I don't think Texas is going to get him. I think Malik Muhammad, Texas is going to end up getting, and I think he's going to end up being a high 4-star. Okay. So Baxter's rankings right now, he's number 118 nationally with Rivals. He's number 51 nationally with ESPN. He's number 30 nationally with On 3. And he's number 26 nationally with 24/7, ranging between a mid 4-star to a high 4-star in all of that. I think the 24/7 composite has him as a high 4-star. That's about where I would probably have him. I don't know that I would call him the number 1 running back in the country. I don't know that I believe that, but he's really good.
Okay. Question answered. So are there guys out there, Ketch? And I know we're getting, closing in on the that 50-minute mark, but are there guys out there that they've offered, and maybe you just answered the question, like an Anthony Hill, or I don't know, John Tay Cook. Are there guys out there that would move the needle for you, that would kind of get you off the to you know what?
Oh, yeah.
They can get who are some of the names?
I mean, if you go and look at what I wrote this weekend, you think they're done at quarterback for the most part. Okay, once they get Cedric Baxter, they're probably done at running back. You look at wide receiver, you know that they're almost certainly gonna add Jonte Cook, who moves the needle. They're going to add Mikael Harrison Pilot, who I think is in this group of guys they've already signed. Darian Gillette is a guy that I think you would get excited about as a potential linebacker. You look, and then you've got Jaquez Petaway, Jalen Hell at the wide receiver position. David Hicks isn't a guy they're likely to get, but they're going to continue to recruit him. Hunter Osborne, the kid that went to Justice Finkley's high school from the state of Alabama, he's a national 150 guy. To me, that's the profile of player that should be your projects. If you're going to have a 2 or 3 year project, it should look a little bit more like Hunter Osborne, Braylon Shelby, Anthony Hill, Toviano, Malik Muhammad, Derek Williams. There are, like I said, as I was saying earlier, this is how the recruiting class should be ending, with names exactly like the ones that I just listed. And if they do that, this will be a better recruiting class than last year. It's just that what happened this weekend, those 7 guys aren't the players that will define this recruiting class. And it just so happens that they're the 7 most recent, but the big dogs are coming. And as long as they bark, and as long as they heal, and as long as they're in this class, then everything's going to be okay. Like at the end of the day, the recruiting class as it currently stands is a work in progress. And you have to treat it as exactly such. It's a work in progress. Now, again, I think Texas is going to end up taking about 10 more high school kids than I would have. But that's just a difference of opinion. Until we see proof suggesting otherwise, this is how Steve Sarkisian is going to build the program, largely through the acquisition of high school football talent. I think what's really interesting, Anwar, and it hasn't been talked about a whole lot, is Texas has 15 seniors. So Texas is sitting at 85 scholarship players. You with me?
Yes.
They lose 15 through graduation this year, assuming nobody uses their COVID year and comes back, which means they have 15 slots to play with. Mm-hmm. They're counting on really high attrition. If they're at 14 now with a couple more commitments likely today and certainly more throughout the week, you can see where they're – I think Sark's going to end up taking about 30 new players, transfers and high school prospects when it's all said and done. But to get there, they're going to have yet another year of really high attrition that is not too dissimilar from what just happened this year, which was a historically high year of attrition. Instead of losing 20 kids, you're probably going to need to lose 15. But so much clutter was cleared out this past year in the program that allowed for Texas to take, 33, 34 guys. In order for it to happen next year, probably is going to have to be some Sark guys mixed into that as well, that maybe a couple of guys from this recruiting class, maybe a couple more from his first recruiting class after he first signed. I mean, to get to a spot where they can take 30, which is what it looks like they're going to do, boy, there's going to be a lot of dudes on this team that either earn spots this year, or I think they're going to be encouraged to see the door when it's all said and done.
Like, I'm looking here. I want to say I was trying to see if I could do it real quick. I was on 24/7's website and looking at their transfer portal thing. If I'm correct, and I'm somewhere in the ballpark, Catch, probably from November of last year until now, Texas may have lost like 20 kids in the transfer portal. Just 20 guys. So I'll send you the link. You might be able to do the math for me while I'm talking.
By the way, we got a super chat question. Did you see Ruben Owens' response to how y'all reacted to him committing to Louisville? I didn't. I don't really care. I mean, the Ruben Owens recruitment it's a handful. It just is. There are dynamics involved in that recruitment that I'm sure he wouldn't be happy with people laughing at the thought of his commitment to Louisville and how long it would last. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I don't know what was said or where it was said. No one has really brought that to our attention. So I don't. You guys would have to give me a little bit more details on it. We can go and do it. Like the thing is, and I think Chris Nelson he hits the nail on the head. When Ruben made his bed, like Ruben, the only reason anyone questions your commitment ability is because you hadn't really committed. I mean, it's the same guy, Ketch, who, again, we're not going to go to war for high school kid like that. So
no, and I want Ruben Owens to succeed.
Correct. Like I like Ruben. I've said it before. I like him. But he likes attention too. Like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ruben's living his best life as he should. So there's nothing wrong with that, but he has been all over the place. And look, if he goes to Louisville and he succeeds, like props to you. Like Ketch and I have been fans of Ruben Owens. So
I want every single one of his dreams to come true.
Yeah.
So no matter what he said in response to us finding a chuckle at his commitment to Louisville, which, by the way, his peers have done the exact same thing. I mean, John Tate Cook saw my tweet about his commitment to Louisville not sticking by signing day and co-signed on it. Like, the reputation's kind of the reputation. That doesn't mean that we view Ruben Owens in a negative light. And no matter what he could have said, if he said, oh, those two ball jokers at Orange Bloods don't know anything they're talking about, there are a couple of loudmouths on that Orange Bloods channel. Touche. I want Ruben Owens to succeed. I want him to be the best version of himself he can ever be. That being said, his recruitment is just complicated. Simple as that.
Yeah, and we will leave it at that.
The SEC in the Super Chat Anwar says, is there historical data to suggest what percentage of decommitments happen during a process? I fear commitments this early. No, I don't have that number. They happen. Smart Money says that somebody from this weekend will decommit when it's all said and done. And Texas will take somebody, right? I mean, they just yesterday, Trevor Gooseby woke up committed to one school, and now he's committed to another. And Billy Walton may flip from Oklahoma State to Texas. Decommitments are just things that are part of the process. I don't know how to handicap that, but it feels like probably one out of every 6, 7, or 8 kids probably decommits somewhere along the way. It's not nearly the problem that people make it out to be, but you're going to have a few in every class. I mean, kids change their minds, and I think that you just have to bake that into the equation. Texas is sitting at 14, but for whatever reasons, before it's all said and done, a couple of these guys may change their minds, and they may change their minds when some more big-time kids come in. And you got a guy, I don't want to call anybody out by name, but a kid with like Jonah Wilson, who's a wide receiver. What if Texas didn't just bring in John Tate Cook, but they brought in Jalen Hale and some other really prevalent national guy? You don't want to be the 5th guy in your class at a position. So, guys are always looking for ways to come up in this world. And I wouldn't make too big of a deal out of it when it's all said and done.
Yeah, Catch. And then, towards the end of the recruitment, you get into October or November, guys start piling in and coaches start saying, hey, man, look, we only got one other guy coming in at this spot to compete against. So your path is a lot clearer over here than it was over there. So yeah, well, you'll lose them, but there aren't always like big time losses, Catch, when it's all said and done. When you just look back and go, my gosh, like this program fell apart because this person didn't come. Usually, most fans usually forget about the guys who decommit at some point.
We have Mike Torres, who's one of our favorite chatters. One of the reasons why I took this question, plus I have the answer. Speaking of the transfer portal, when does that ever happen? What happens with KD Davis? Anwar, you might have missed it, but a grad transfer linebacker from North Texas entered the portal last week by the name of KD Davis. He's a multiple-time all-conference player as a middle linebacker. He's like 6 foot 230. Mm-hmm. And when it happened on the day that Arch jumped, I had heard from I talked to somebody this weekend with some knowledge of his recruitment. North Texas had been waiting for this to happen, that they knew that this was a guy that wants to play on a Power 5 stage, has Power 5 ability, and can make some Power 5 NIL money.
Hello.
From what I've seen, and it's been a couple of days since I've seen this, but I believe he's visiting Texas A&M and Ole Miss in his first 2 visits in the portal. Have not yet seen Texas associated with KD Davis, but he's a guy that I really like. And Anwar, he's a guy that I think would step in just from a profile. If you look at it, he would be a guy that steps in and is a day one starter at that Mike linebacker based on what he's already done in his career at the level that he's done it at. And the fact that he's got Ole Miss and Texas A&M looking at him too, top 20-ish programs. I mean, right now you'd have to say Texas A&M above that with the way they've recruited and the way that they finished in each of the last 2 years speaks to his ability. And right now that kid seems to have his eye on SEC football first and foremost. But if it was me calling the shots and I'm Texas, I would throw some NIL weight around and try to – this is one of these linebackers that Texas has been waiting for. And just because one ends up in the portal, though, doesn't mean you automatically get him. But at this point, I have not seen Davis's name mentioned with Texas.
Okay, so is the smart play going forward? If you're going to go into the transfer portal, do you go in after the season and when you're with the masses, or do you wait until like now where there's people who are really, really going to want you? I'm just curious, what's the smart play? Because we just saw, Diamante Tucker Dorsey went into the transfer portal a few weeks ago, lands at Texas, and I see this guy, and it's late. It's a late hour.
Well, he's a grad transfer, so
that's true. My bad.
He didn't graduate until May.
That's right. Yeah.
So his options were he needed to graduate, and once he graduated, he fell into the category of player, quite frankly, that has tons of leverage, because that guy goes into the portal, and any school in the country that remember those old like Tom and Jerry cartoons where like Tom would look at Jerry, and Jerry would turn into a big old piece of steak.
Yes.
And he'd just be imagining him. That's what these schools are doing with a guy like KD Davis, because there's nobody in the portal right now. So if you have a need, it's hard to fill it. And then a guy like this pops in who's a grad transfer. And yes, he suddenly looks like the prettiest girl at the ball when maybe he's not quite as, I think this guy would have had suitors no matter what. But when it gets really dry, yeah, man, you can be halfway pretty and everybody wants to take you to the ball. And I think that, good for this kid. This kid's worked. This is what I'm talking about. Let other schools develop your projects.
Correct.
This guy, KD Davis, I looked it up. Let me pull up his recruiting profile because it's kind of crazy. You're talking about a guy that signs with North Texas. So he signed with North Texas as a 6 foot, 200-pound, low 3-star prospect from Ennis, Texas. His offers going before he made his decision were North Texas, Arkansas State, Illinois, Louisiana Tech, La Monroe, Memphis, Missouri State, New Mexico State, and Tulsa. That's who he chose from.
Mm-hmm.
Not a list of world beaters, which is why he signed with North Texas. The guy throws on 30 pounds. He goes from a safety to a linebacker. He balls out for a couple of years. And now he gets not only does he get a chance to upgrade and put himself into a position where he gets to play a higher brand of football, but he's going to get paid in the process. Like America, sometimes it really is a beautiful country. Jesse Wyatt Anwar asks, do you prefer Cedric Baxter or Reuben Owens in the super chat? Baxter reminds me of Cedric Cobbs from Arkansas and bigger. I think KD Davis is former Cowboys Keith Davis's son. I personally, Anwar, probably would take Reuben Owens because to the naked eye, Reuben Owens is like a super ultra explosive running back. that can change games on one play. Baxter's he's 6'2", 215. But, we're splitting hairs here between guys who are really hot, nationally elite players. Personally, and Ruben, if you're out there, don't get mad because I made a few jokes. Like, at the end of the day, I still have Ruben Owens ranked really high. I would, by a smidge, rank Owens over Baxter. You probably haven't watched film of Baxter. You've been on vacation, right?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Baxter. I mean, just because of the Florida connection. So, because of the Florida thing, I was able to, I have watched his highlights and everything. Of course, it's, everyone looks good in their highlights catch. That's not really saying too much, but he's got the speed, he's got the elusiveness that you want, and he's got that breakaway speed. So, you got that initial burst, around that line of scrimmage. So I like, his vision. Catch. There'll be some people will tell you, and you have to take it for what it's worth. Some people on the Texas staff will tell you that they favor Baxter over Owens. Now, that started to come out when it started to seem like Ruben might be leaning elsewhere, and Ruben's
funny how that happens.
Yeah, it's kind of the I didn't want her. Go to the woman, you ask her for the number, and she says no, and the guy walks away like, I didn't want to talk to her. No way. It's like, yeah, okay. So regardless, there's people in the building that feel like Baxter was better than Owens, and well, to be seen. If you told me, here you had to choose, I would choose Ruben. But
it's close though. I mean,
close. It's close.
We go to steakhouses, and it's like, do you want the filet or do you want some places have badass pork chops. Like, it's a very high selection of player that we're talking about here.
100%. But again, so it's so nitpicking, and but what probably would be for me, just a guy going away from home. How's that gonna work? That'd probably be more so than anything else.
I will say this. The player that Baxter kind of reminds me the most of is not a player that hit big. He kind of reminds me of So-So Jamabo, the kid that went to UCLA, who Texas almost poached back in 2015, late in the recruiting process. He ends up going to UCLA and ends up not. They've got very similar profiles. Someone mentioned Adrian Peterson. The difference is, when Adrian Peterson was in high school, that dude was running at the state track meet in the 100 meters and running like 10.5s. And Baxter's not that guy. The thing is, he looks really fast on film, but he ain't running track, which always, you can weed out the real world-class speed guys from guys who are just fast on the field against other guys who might not be super fast by whether they run track or not. I would like to have seen Baxter with some track times this year, just to be able to compare apples to apples. But he's a really good prospect. I mean, again, we're nitpicking national elite guys. If Cedric Baxter can avoid the Mount Rushmore of things that can cause a career to go sideways, there's a very good chance that he ends up being an NFL level football player. I think one of the things about Baxter that is interesting to me is, for a guy who's 6'2", 215, he loves to bounce everything to the outside. Mm-hmm. That kid is looking to get to the sideline every time he has the football. If you've got elite speed, you can pull that off. You can constantly be hunting for the sideline because you can outrun everybody. I don't know what his true speed is, but as much as he likes to break it outside at this next level, when guys get a lot faster, we see it all the time. It's not as easy to get to the corner at the collegiate level. In high school, that kid gets to the outside and he's gone every time. It's impossible for me to really be able to know how much of that will translate to the collegiate level when the same type of style is applied to defenses with a lot more team speed. If he's fast enough, though, where it translates, he's going to be a beast. Really. Like, he's really, really, really good. I have some real nitpick pieces of his game. Like, I don't think he hangs out between the tackles a lot. Even when he runs between the tackles, he's always looking to bounce it outside. When he gets to college, his college running back coaches are going to tell him, put your head down and go north-south. Use your speed to go north-south and not east-west. And at the high school level, he uses it a lot to go east-west because he can. It'll be a little different at the collegiate level. We'll see. I mean, running backs are tricky things. The guys that win combines are not the guys that always pan out and turn out to be great running backs. And the guys that are great combine guys oftentimes are the ones that fail. So it's hard to completely pinpoint.
The only thing I'll say is as your native Floridian here, he does play in a high school division that's really good. Like when you start thinking of like the Houston kind of things.
He's in Orlando. That's a big boy. He ain't playing small. No, out in the sticks, Florida football.
No, I mean the Edgewater has a history of having good athletes. They play against the Jones of the world, the Popkas of the world. Like they play some really good programs out there. Boone has gotten better, so they I would just say that he's playing against some dogs. He's playing I think they're 6A.
Do they chase rabbits in Orlando, or is that more country?
No, that's more south, heading down to the southern, so going down to like the Pahokis of the world, and in Belle Glades is really where that whole thing developed back in the like 80s. In Belle Glades, Florida, out there in the sugar canes and fields, and the smoke would come up and they would chase the rabbits and things like that. It's more like that was a Belle Glade thing.
I think that, Jesse compares him to Cedric Cobb, size, and all Owens does have a few more exciting highlight reel, good with both. Exactly. If you get a commitment from one of those two running backs, your running backs coach is going to want to raise, right? Remember when, oh God, help me out here. Drayton, sorry. When Drayton would get a running back like this, it'd turn into look at every year who he's recruiting. Like these are guys that you hang on a wall and say, this is my trophy. And you know what? We should, for just a moment, we got to give AJ Milwee is getting a lot of credit for the Arch Manning recruitment. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the guys on the staff that doesn't have a long college resume yet.
Yeah.
That was big for him. Like AJ Milwee now gets to go on the map and say, and Sark will get the majority of the credit, but the quarterback coach has to get some credit. He's the guy that's going to be working day in and day out with Arch Manning. And, we said Malik Murphy was a Sark guy because of the Alabama thing. And then Quinn Ewers is a transfer, and nobody was really saying that the quarterback coach really mattered a whole lot in his recruitment. Shout out, though, to AJ Milwee. Like, if he's able to do that semi-consistently in recruiting Anwar, that guy will be a head coach in due time. Like, if usually you're either a coach or you're a recruiter. And everybody always raves about Milwee's chops as an offensive mind, that he just needs an opportunity. If he ends up proving that he can be a high-level recruiter, Texas will have a hard time hanging on to that guy because those guys typically become OCs and head coaches if you can combine the two. So I just wanted to give AJ Milwee a shout-out. I didn't do it in my column this week, and I meant to, and it just clicked. I was like, oh, yeah. That guy warrants a shout out, and good for him. Good for him. Like, that's a guy that looks different on paper today as a commodity than he did a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, Ketch, if the Mannings co-sign on you, I think you're good, right? I think because no matter what, they've got to know that, hey, AJ Milwee is going to still be interacting with the guy. So, he's still going to be interacting with Arch. So even if Sark is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, they still know AJ's around. And so for them to say, they feel really comfortable, for the report to come out that AJ was calling the coach like consistently. I mean, talking about he talked to him more than the family members. Like, to see that kind of thing from AJ, It is good, and good for him too, Catch, because he's in a shadow. Like everyone's, for the most part, is going to give Steve Sarkisian the credit for the offense, the credit for the quarterbacks, and he ends up being in Steve Sarkisian's shadow. But for him to be able to pull that off, he had to play a part in this, says a lot. And to your point, if you're offensive minded and you're known as a guy who can be a QB whisperer of any, at this point, if I'm AJ, I update my LinkedIn profile. And next year, I'm trying to see if I can get an OC position somewhere, just because of what he's been able to do. And if Quinn Ewers has any kind of success this year, AJ will be able to say he had a hand in that. So it could be a good thing coming for them, down the pipe with AJ. So to your point, props to him. See, we could be nice.
By the way, Paul, giving you some love. That's a huge point you make, Anwar. The Manning signed off on this. It resonates with so many recruits. Fantastic for Texas. Absolutely. All right, I got one more little mini rant to go on, and then I'll be ready to close up shop if you're okay with that, Anwar.
Yeah, I gotta go get a tire. I had someone actually. Is it bad when you, as a man, you're struggling to change a tire and another dude has to help you out?
No, man. Look, I make the money that I make so that people can do that shit for me. Mow my lawn, change my tires, open up the hood and fix something on my car. I am not ashamed of saying that I am mechanically worthless. But I work really hard at writing recruit stories so that I can make enough money that when I need a tire change, somebody can do it for me. Well, and so do you, Anwar. So do you.
Yeah, well, I was at right there, Anderson Mill 620. That 7, was it Circle K? That's right there, 7-Eleven right there at the corner. Tire was, I realized that the thing was busted, so pulled over. And there's a guy to help me. In fact, I should find his business card. I asked him for a business card. I want to give him a shout out.
So, you are supporting dudes that need to change tires to make a living when you pay them to do it. You just put money back into the economy and you're helping the little guy. So I will not be ashamed. Okay. I know how to change a tire. Like if I had to, I could change a tire. I ain't trying to change a tire when it's 100 degrees outside. Now, maybe my big butt needs to, right? Like I'm guessing when it's 102 in Houston and the humidity is like 90%, that changing a tire, that's got to be like 5,000 calories burned off in a very short amount of time. But no, I think you can. All right. By the way, I was changing it. He just came to help. So we're clear. I wasn't standing there doing nothing. He just offered a helping hand. So guys, plus, I can change a tire. Please stop. Anwar, when you're changing a tire, usually you're mad about something that just happened. The tire blew out. You got a nail in it or something. You just bought the tire and now it's broken down. In your moment of pissed offness, it's always good to have changing the tire. Like you got your nice clothes on, you're getting ready to go out and see your girl. You got to change a tire and get sweaty and get your clothes greasy. No, man. Again, you work really hard so that some of these tasks can be done for you. You know what? I mean, we could all clean our houses if we wanted to, but sometimes it's nice to just pay someone to come in and do it for you. We use dry cleaners. We could do that. We could learn how to dry clean our clothes. We do some of these chores to make our lives a little easier. And I will not let these people shame you, Anwar. No. Keep your head up.
Thank you, Ketchum.
Keep your head up.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a man. I'm a man. Okay. What was your last one?
Here's my last thing, because I've seen it in. And yes, Chuck, I was being a little facetious with helping the little guy. But yeah, man, helping the little guy. There are people who all they do is change car tires. And if you step in and take that away from them, you're just slowing down the economy. I think that's how that works. Maybe not. People have been saying that Alabama have been using 3 stars and 4 stars, and that Texas in the last few years, their best offensive linemen have been low 4 stars and high 3 stars. Anwar, it sucks sometimes when you teach and you teach and you teach and you teach, and I see that shadow.
I got him on pause. I mean, mute rather.
It's not that you can't hit when you're Alabama or you're Texas and you land a high 3-star or a low 4-star. It's that you have to hit above what the averages suggest that you would hit on. So if we look at the offensive linemen that Alabama has signed since 2015, that let me count them out real quick. Let me see how many we got. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've signed like 18 to 20 offensive linemen since 2015 that were non-5 stars and non-high 4 stars. Talking about Alabama. They've hit on 3 out of 18. And one was a mid 4-star guy, and one was a low 4-star guy, and the other was a high 3-star guy. Alabama isn't. People want to use the Alabama deal. They are not overperforming with their development. The offensive lineman that Alabama has been transforming into NFL players, by and large, are 5-star guys. 5-star guys show up. They play like 5 stars. They play in a few national championship games. They go to the first round. That's not what Alabama has been doing with the development of its offensive linemen for most of the last decade. The dirty little secret, and if you'll remember, when Brockermeyer was being recruited, there were a lot of Texas fans that like to bring this up, that Alabama, as developers of offensive linemen, actually weren't that good, that they only hit with 5 stars, except that line of logic didn't work because Tommy Brockermeyer was a 5-star. But had he been something less than that, you could actually point at Alabama's developmental record with offensive linemen over the course of the last decade, and you'll find that they miss way more than they hit. And the thing is, that's everybody. Yes, Texas hit on Connor Williams, but to suggest that that's the route to go is to ignore all of the guys that they've taken with a similar type profile that didn't pan out. And if you think I'm crazy, why hasn't Texas had an offensive line that's been good in 15, 16 years? I mean, you can't say that what they've done is the right approach when it really hasn't worked. And other than a few anomalies, Texas just hasn't been very good on the offensive line. Anwar, we could take questions and comments all day long. We got over 500 plus people in the room, but Paxton says Connor Williams was decent. Connor Williams was better than decent. Connor Williams was really good. The problem is, the math says Connor Williams hits 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 times. Texas hasn't been hitting 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. They've been hitting 1 out of 8 or 1 out of 9. So just because Connor Williams hits, that doesn't tell a story. You need more Connor Williamses to hit. 1 isn't good enough. And it's kind of the same thing with the guys that are like, Alabama's got some guys who are 3 stars who are starting. Yeah, they do. But they're not developing those guys at a higher rate than any of the other schools are. They're just surrounded by monsters. The highest rated non-5-star offensive lineman since 2015 that Alabama has put into the NFL, they've had 1 guy get drafted. Mid 4 stars, low 4 stars, high 3 stars, mid 3 stars, low 3 stars. Add all of those up together, Deontay Brown was a high. You remember Deontay, right? That big, massive monster.
Yes.
He went in the 6th round.
Correct.
He was a high 3-star player, but along that, missed on Dallas Womack, missed on Brandon Kennedy, missed on Matt Womack, missed on Scott Lashley, missed on Chris Owens, missed on Hunter Brandon, missed on Kendall Randolph, missed on Tommy Brown. Like, to get Deontay Brown, they missed like 8 other guys consecutively. So don't get too hyped up on Alabama's making it work with lower tiered guys. They have just as many misses as Texas does. The difference is they surround their misses with a shitload of 5 stars and high 4 stars. And when you do that, you're going to have really good offensive lines when it's all said and done. Anyway, that was my final comment. I just needed to make sure that people understood that there's still work to do. You can win with profiles like that, but your coaching and your development and your strength and conditioning program better be elite. Simple as that. That's all I got to say.
All right. Who gets the gummies?
Good question. Let me see.
Because I got to go last week. I kind of pulled. I gave it to Eric last week, so I think it's only right that you get to choose this week.
I'm gonna pick this guy, the SEC. He's been a really solid contributor in the chats for the last couple of weeks. I thought he was really good today. Make some interesting observations. The SEC, you win the gummies from rogueshop.com today. Do me a favor. Message me either through email, gkketch@gmail.com. GK, it's my Twitter handle, @gmail.com. Or message me on, if you're on Orange Bloods, you can just message me through the Rivals PMs, and we'll hook you up with Richard over at rogueshop.com to get the gummies. Congratulations. You are going to feel better, sleep better, live better with a little bit of Rogue in your life. I think my favorite thing about Rogue, Anwar, is it's universally beloved.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody on Orange. I've seen dozens of people say, I've got Rogue products and my life is better. I don't see a lot of dudes who are like, I got the gummies from Rogue and I still sleep like crap. Like that just doesn't happen. So
no. By the way, Rogue is asking who won the other day. Last week was Eric Torres. He won. But now that you said it, Eric, I don't think I told you how to get in contact with us. So
Eric, you do the exact same thing that I just told the SEC. Shoot me an email, gkketch@gmail.com, or message me on Orange Bloods. We will get you hooked up, and you guys can see what the fuss is all about with regards to rogueshop.com. Hey, before you leave, real quick, Rick, you said DeGabriel Floyd update. He signed with a non-major, like he's going to Florida A&M, not Florida A&M. He's going to some school, though, that is a lower level school. He's not going to a major D1 college at this point. That's your update. I'll always throw that out there. And Paxton brings up the birthday cake. Yep, birthday cake. Still here, still working. Do us a favor, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. We don't ask for much, but we do need your likes. We do need you to subscribe to the channel. Colby says Alabama A&M. I knew it was an A&M of some variety. Yeah, do that for us. We don't ask for much. Like, subscribe. We'll see you guys tomorrow here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. You guys be good. Later.